I mean, by all accounts, we are now in the, or we're meant to be, in the post-state capture years. And yet the situation at Eskom, if anything to go by, it's not getting better. It feels like it's getting worse.
I think the reality is that, as you mentioned, the damage that is done to Eskom is so deep and so wide that the revelation around billions stolen is just the tip of the iceberg. The reality is that over a sustained period of time, with the help of a politically coordinated scheme, 3 types of damages were done to Eskom. One was billions that is stolen, and we get some of it now revealed, and I believe there is a lot more than that. But the second and equally damaging problem with Eskom over the years was that not only money was stolen, but also skills and capacity and systems were destroyed. Incompetent people were brought in, competent people were pushed out, systems were pretty much destroyed. By that I mean procurement systems, supply system, control system, maintenance systems, etc., etc., etc. And the third one, that Eskom did not keep for those years, and even as we speak, with the changing technology. Technology of energy generation globally has moved. The country has, under political mismanagement, has kept the energy system hostage to political patronage. And we see that very obvious policy changes that should be made, ministers and those in charge of policy, they take their time by years, not by months and weeks. And as a result, they keep the economy hostage, jobs are lost. Literally, Michelle, lives are lost in our hospitals and in our places that we don't record. So I think it is really an indictment on the incompetence and lack of commitment, political commitment. Not that we don't have solutions, we do. But it is beyond me to explain as to why our policymakers are so dilly-dallying, and the only explanation that we can have is that they benefit from it, because it's not as if they don't know. And let me just highlight one of the benefits that we still be, I believe, is still at play. When the crisis happened, the so-called collapse of the generators, then emergency supplementary measures put in place basically means buying diesel, and diesel contracts became now more lucrative, more profitable, and more a source of state capture of some sort than coal contracts. Now, as we speak, it is not clear who owns those, who has those evergreen contracts. We don't know how they buy it. We don't know how much is siphoned out through those contracts. Maintenance contracts the same. So the whole Eskom, as I mentioned, the system has broken, and it's not being fixed.
I mean, Dr. Abedian, are you saying that the situation we find ourselves in now is exactly how those responsible for state capture wanted it to be?
Pretty much. I want to draw an analogy between apartheid. Apartheid is sort of officially finished, but look at the consequences of it. Why? Because those decisions made, those systems not fixed or put in place, has long-term consequences. And Eskom is the same. Those people who broke the system, they wanted certain things not to happen, meaning the energy generation not be regular, maintenance not be regular, so that they can have a diesel contract, so that they can have transportation contracts, so that they can have this chaotic situation reflecting poorly on the government.
Sure.
And what is surprising, I'm not surprised by the evil intentions, but what I'm surprised is that over the past 3 years, the current government is not moving fast enough to change these things. It's just so obvious that the technology of generation has to be changed, so that alternative generation capacity, not through Eskom. Eskom will take years to clean itself, maybe decades. But alternative sources should be allowed to generate with the help of new technology, so that the economy can grow. And these limits that ministers and regulators put in place is actually, I don't know, Bill, it boggles the mind as to why they do this.
Yeah. I mean, South Africans who are watching your interview, I think as well will be listening to you thinking that this is such an incredibly bitter pill to swallow, because we know that state capture affects the lives of ordinary South Africans. You've spoken about job losses, you've spoken about people losing their lives. We now know 40 billion rand lost to state capture in terms of those dodgy contracts at Transnet. So just Eskom is just one of the many SOEs that are battling to recover. You talk about political mismanagement of particularly the Eskom saga as well. I mean, at the moment, we know Eskom is pretty much holding the country hostage in terms of energy supply. Just in terms of quality of life, in terms of our country's economic recovery, and yet independent power producers, for one, still have this limited mandate.
Absolutely. I mean, that's just one sentence ministerial. Increase it from 10 to 200 to 1,000. If private sector independent producers are able to produce and are willing to invest at their own cost, not at taxpayers' cost, give them absolute mandate subject to regulations in terms of environment and so on, as we should do in any case. Let them invest. What this insistence on the minister must control who produces via gas, who produces via solar, who produces what. The economy does not care that the minister must control or government must control. The economy cares that the energy is available, that is reliable, that is price-wise competitive, environmentally clean. Those are the attributes of energy requirement. And other than that, the politics must get out of the way, because people are losing their jobs. People are dying in our hospitals. And very importantly, thousands, tens of thousands of jobs that could be created through these alternatives are stopped from being created in an economy that desperately needs jobs.
And we just saw those devastating jobs numbers coming from Statistics South Africa just about a week ago. Dr. Abedian, you talk about politics getting out of the way. Everything you've said, I mean, these issues can't come as a surprise to government officials. It can't come as a surprise to the minister in charge or to the president himself. So are we to read from that you know, the experts are making the right suggestions, they're giving advice on how we can move our country forward in terms of the energy crisis we are in, and those suggestions are being ignored?
Absolutely. I mean, I've listened to so many energy experts, as many others have, that have very practical, very feasible, affordable suggestions. But somehow the cabinet doesn't hear, the president talks about it, the minister talks about the desperate need of the economy for energy, and yet they go to the dark rooms and make a decision completely different from the experts were suggesting. So how do we explain that? Why? This is a different type of capture. This is not a capture of a stealing and looting institution. It's a capture of the economy in the hands of those who are not prepared to make the right decisions.
If we continue in the same vein, Dr. Abedian, given our jobs numbers, given the contraction in the economy, if we continue in the same vein, particularly insofar as our energy supply is concerned, what do the next 5-10 years look like for our country?
Unfortunately, it's going to be a mirror image of the past 10 years, because the economy, what happened is, because of the mismanagement of energy, our growth, remember before all this crisis happened, our economy was growing between 4 and 5% per annum. It came to 0.5%. Then, of course, that was before the COVID crisis. Now, if we continue the same way, we're going to get the same results. We're going to get the economy hostage. Our growth and job creation is going to go down, at a time that we should put, quite frankly, a national priority, strategic priority, in order to fast-track this thing, not to slow them down, not to have another delay, not to have another court case, not to have another dodgy tender and so on and so forth. We need to make it squeaky clean, fast-track it as a national priority between private and public sector, not across factions of who wants to benefit now as opposed to what the Guptas and Mackenzies and others benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Iraj Abedian, thanks very much for your perspective on this incredibly worrying story that so many South Africans are trying to come to terms with as well. He's with the Pan-African Capital Holdings. In fact, he is the CEO as we continue to unpack and try to understand the effects of state capture, particularly on our SOEs and in particular, of course, in terms of Eskom.